welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro, so glad you could join us. Uh-oh, what happened to our music? And it just brought, there we go, it's back again. I feel naked when, going into a break when I don't have music underneath me. And trust me, ladies, you don't want to see that. You don't want to hear it or see it. Anyway, welcome back to the show. Glad you could join us. Coming up here in just a little bit, we're going to speak to activist, the minister himself, Stretch Sanders, who said it is not possible for a minority, particularly an African-American, to be racist. Well, I'm going to ask him this question then. And by the way, I completely disagree with that statement. But I'm going to ask him this question. Well, is it possible for an African-American to be an anti-Semite? Because in this machete attack, this man was black. So I'm going to specifically ask him those questions and more.
And then if he says yes, you'll say, well, and is anti-Semitism considered racism?
Of course it is. Because you're looking at someone based, on what they look like or religion. It's the same thing. It's just ignorance. Anyway,
I like your plan.
We'll get to that coming up in hour number 2. I'm ready for it. It's going to be an explosive hour of radio. I promise you that. But, I wanted to get to what's going on with the Trump administration. And now Democrats are saying that it is a game changer. A new report that the New York Times put out yesterday shows the need for witnesses in the Senate impeachment trial. And the reason for that is because this report, as I said, that was written by the New York Times, outlines the acting White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney's involvement in the Ukraine aid freeze, and also describes other top White House officials' efforts to convince President Trump to release the aid, including Bolton. There were people around the president that were telling the president to release the aid. It didn't work. The president would not buy into that. And according to these emails and according to these messages that the New York Times has obtained, it did not work, and Trump was absolutely 100% involved in withholding the aid, even though people around him, and they were right, like Bolton, like Mulvaney, tried to advise the president to not do that. And that is why now Democrats are saying more than ever, screaming to high heaven, that we need more witnesses.
And they have very little faith in Joe Biden. They don't want to ask Hillary Clinton to run.
It has nothing to do with that.
No, the Democrats think they don't have a chance in 2020, and
that
they don't.
has nothing to do with what I just said.
And so they're going all out on impeachment.
Okay, I don't think
because they have
hold
to.
On. Okay, first of all, I don't consider that going all out. Forget about the politics of this for a second. You have people. The New York Times has obtained emails that show that John Bolton and Mulvaney were advising the president to not withhold aid, and apparently, allegedly, it didn't work, and the president wouldn't budge on it. Don't you think in this specific case, forget about politics for a second, that Mulvaney and Bolton should testify under oath as witnesses to find out the truth? Forget about, who's going to win in 2020 and who the Democrats have up there. Don't you think any logical person in a Senate trial would want to hear from Bolton and Mulvaney? It's a pretty logical and simple question, isn't it?
No, I'm not saying that they shouldn't testify, but I'm giving you the reason as to why this is going the way that it's going.
And I'm giving you the reason why we should have these two testify. It's now more important than ever in these emails. And listen, the New York Times, I don't know how they got these emails, but it is a bombshell of a report, because it shows that there are some competent people around the president of the United States. They advised him not to do this because they knew it was a mistake. And remember, Mulvaney was the guy in a press conference that said there was a quid pro quo. And then, of course, when the president and people around him said, no, you got to retract that, when he told the truth, and then he had to go back and he struggled retracting that, Mulvaney said it in a press conference in the White House. He said there was a quid pro quo. And I do believe this report. It makes complete sense to me. Bolton, say what you want about Bolton. He's not a dumb guy. He's got a ton of experience. He's extremely intelligent. And I'm telling you right now, if the Republicans don't want to hear from Mulvaney, and if the Republicans do not want to hear from Bolton as witnesses, then they have no backbone, and they clearly don't care about the president's behavior. All they care about is that there is a Republican that is running the presidency of the United States. I mean, that's what it comes down to me. But here's another story that I find extremely troubling. We've said it for a long time now. I don't know why the president has a love affair with the evil, murderous dictator, the Kremlin, and that is Vladimir Putin. I don't understand it. I don't know why. Well, news arrived early Sunday morning that the president had spoken to his Russian counterpart. But guess what? That information did not come from the White House. After the Kremlin decided to issue a brief statement saying that Putin had initiated this call to thank Trump for information that was provided by the United States that helped foil a terrorist attack in St. Petersburg. Then 24 hours later, all of a sudden, the White House releases some information. The Kremlin released more information. Neither side provided much more detail, but here's what we know, and again, I find this troubling. Trump is now facing a pending choice. He's talked about it before that could lead to more questions about his ties to Putin. He's been invited to Moscow by Putin to attend this Victory Day parade. Have you heard about this? It happens in May, and it marks the 75th anniversary of the Allied victory over the Nazis. Now, the president has said several times in the past that he'd be interested in attending this, and Vladimir Putin, his buddy, has invited him once again. So my question is, why is it every single time, and I mean every single time, Vladimir Putin enters a conversation with the president, he always defends him? Why is it that he takes Vladimir Putin's side over our own CIA, over our own FBI? Why would the president even entertain going to this event? That's my question, JD. I know you're a Trump supporter. Why is it that he supports a guy and is so nice to Vladimir Putin, yet our own politician in our own country, who we might disagree with on policy, he couldn't be more nasty to? For example, going after Nancy Pelosi's appearance a few weeks ago, commenting on her teeth. Do you ever think he would make a comment like that about Vladimir Putin or Kim Jong-un? Why? Why is he so close to Vladimir Putin? That is the question to me, that is the question of the Trump presidency that I want to answer.
Because if he made a comment about Vladimir Putin in that regard, it could start a war. If he did the same thing about Kim Jong-un, it could start a war. He's trying to avoid starting wars. He understands that Vladimir Putin is probably one of the top 3 most powerful people in the world at this point. Nancy Pelosi is someone that he is part of an administration that is trying to get him out of office.
Okay, fair enough.
And he's and the way that he responds, obviously calling Schiff a pencil neck and calling making fun of Pelosi's teeth and everything else he's done, but he's not going to do the exact same thing with a leader of a foreign country because it could cause a much bigger issue.
Okay, so I don't want the president to do that, and I am not insinuating that, and I agree with you, but at the same time, it doesn't mean you have to kiss the ass of evil, murderous dictators either. Doesn't mean you have to insult them.
I just think he doesn't want to start a conflict with Russia, and really, I don't blame him for that.
Not wanting to start a conflict with Russia is one thing, but taking Vladimir Putin's advice over our own CIA is something completely different. Going over there and entertaining this anniversary and this celebration is utterly ridiculous. And why is it that the White House never puts out these transcripts first? Why is it that the White House never tells us, oh, yeah, the president had a conversation with Vladimir Putin? Why is it that we have to hear it from the Russians first? Well, I'll tell you why that is, because I don't think the president wants the information out. And I certainly don't think he wants all the information out. And by the way, these days, guess what? If you want to get on a presidential phone call with another leader, boy, they are limiting who can listen to these conversations. This most recent, call with Putin comes amid fresh scrutiny into Trump's phone calls with foreign leaders and the White House's handling of those conversations, including recent attempts to limit the number of people who now can listen in. Now, why would they be doing that? Well, they're doing that because they're afraid, probably, of what Donald Trump will say in another phone call. Because the man is an idiot. That's why. And, there's plenty of things that he's probably said in many of these conversations that we'll never know. What we know in some of these conversations and some of the things he said are completely ridiculous. Let's open up the phone line, 702-257-5396. Again, that number to call is 702-257-5396. And by the way, I want to add this. Trump has spent one of every 5 days in 2019 at one of his golf clubs. According to CNN's tally, he spent at least 252 days at a Trump golf club and 333 days at a Trump property as president. Obama played 333 rounds of golf. That's during his 8 years. Okay, Trump's already about to surpass that after a couple years. And remember, Donald Trump was the guy who went after Barack Obama before Trump was president, saying, oh, when I'm president, I'm not going to be able to play golf. When I'm president, I'm not going to have time to play golf. I'm going to be so busy. Let me repeat that once again to you Trump supporters out there, because I think this is very important. And remember, this is the guy who attacked Barack Obama for playing too much golf. One of every 5 days, that is 20%, if math serves me right, in 2019, he has been at one of his golf courses. Is that the guy you want running this country? 20% of the time playing golf? I know people who don't even have jobs that have money that don't play that much golf, who love golf, let alone the president of the United States, and by the way, his own golf club. So who's profiting off of that? When the president arrives at one of his own resorts, who do you think is profiting off of that, and who is suffering from it? Well, you and I are suffering from it because it is the taxpayers. Who's profiting from it? The Trump administration. I shouldn't say the Trump administration, the Trump family. That's who profiting from that. But I don't hear Republicans calling out Donald Trump for this. Geez, I wonder why. All I heard was Republicans for 8 years complaining that Barack Obama played too much golf. Don't hear them complaining about Donald Trump. I'm just so sick of it. The irony of it, right? This is the guy.
I think they would be complaining if he wasn't doing quite a few things in Republicans' eyes or fiscal conservatives' eyes to actually help the country and help their pocketbooks, which he is. I think if he wasn't doing these things, if he wasn't getting things done, and he wasn't trying to do the things that he said that he ran on, like, for example, building the wall.
Which he hasn't done.
Trying to do these things.
Which he hasn't done.
The wall is being built currently.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Not in the way. Not in the way he described it. Absolutely not.
The wall is being built, Brian. Mexico did not pay for it, but the wall is being built.
Well, he campaigned on that. We're going to build a wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it. Remember when he did the shouts? We're going to build a wall. And who's going to pay for it? Mexico.
And he made every single
and I said
conscious.
That was a farce.
He made every single conscious effort to make that happen. It just did not take place.
Well, fine. I could say I'm going to invade. Area 54. Is it Area 54? I could say
it's Area 69.
Yeah, Area 69. Yeah, they're very funny. I could say I'm going to make every effort to do it, but it doesn't mean I'm going to do it if it's an outrageous claim.
It's not that outrageous. I mean, that would be much more outrageous. Your claim would than
it's
Trump's,
an outrageous claim.
But if he wasn't getting things done, then I think you would hear a big outcry from conservatives.
Right. Well, let's take your phone calls out there. What do you guys think? 702-257-5396. We're talking about Trump playing golf at one of his golf clubs at least 1 out of every 5 days in 2019, which is unbelievably ridiculous. We're also talking about this phone call that President Donald Trump had with Vladimir Putin. But guess who we heard it from first? We didn't hear it from the White House. We heard it from the Kremlin. And now Vladimir Putin inviting him out on a date, apparently, this 75th anniversary of the Allied victory over the Nazis. And the fact that Trump is even entertaining this I think is completely ridiculous. That number to call again, 257-5396. Let's go to Roger. Roger, you're first up. What's going on, Roger?
Hey, Roger.
Hey, Happy New Year's, guys.
You too.
Hey, I wanted to say something to JD. I mean, JD, is it because you're from Iowa that you're so naive about Trump being a coward to Putin? Look, we got the greatest army, greatest military in the world. Afraid to fight a war, afraid to call Putin a little midget, or he called Kim Jongun all kind of names. You telling me he's afraid to call him names because you don't want to start a war? Are you really serious, JD? Are you really apologetic for this coward, this draft dodging, this ignorant man that we got he luckily got elected? You really support this guy? Do you really think he's a good? No, let me say this one thing. If I was a drug dealer, but yet still I went around and I paved the roads on my street and I painted all my neighbor's house, would that make me an okay guy?
Ooh, I like that analogy. Roger, I like that analogy. JD, go ahead. Go ahead, JD. Respond to that. Let's go ahead, Roger. Hang on the line. Go ahead, JD.
Why would I want Donald Trump to call Vladimir Putin a midget, Roger, or Anthony, or Barry, or Dan, or Steve?
All right, well, nobody cares about that.
Or whatever alias you want to use for the 50th time that you've called him with a different name. Stick with your name from now on, please. By the way.
All right, nobody cares about that.
I'd like
Have
to
the
address
conversation.
That being said,
Nobody cares about my name.
Okay, you're right. Now you are actually right there. Now that being said, I don't want a war with Russia at all. I want nothing to do with that. The United States doesn't want that. It would not be effective. And if Donald Trump were to call Vladimir Putin a midget, there's a chance that could take place. That's just common sense. It has nothing to do with me being from Iowa.
Yo, man, you know what?
There's no naivety attached to that.
Come on,
I just don't want a war. It's very simple.
Right. And listen, first of all, JD, Donald Trump doesn't even know what the hell he's doing.
Oh, okay, you're right.
First of all,
the S&P just hit 9,000 for the first time in American history last week.
So what does that have
do you
to
own any
with
stock?
Of course, I own stock.
Oh, you do? Okay, I don't think you do.
You're making an irrational. You're conflating something. You're saying the guy's a fool, but the stock market is great.
I'm not saying. When did I say he's a fool? You said he was a fool.
He is a fool.
Well, he is a fool. I agree. I don't think. All right. Well, hold on a second. Let me try to mediate this a little bit here, Roger. Now, I agree with both of you to a certain extent. Here's where I do agree with JD. I don't think it would suit the United States any good if the president called Vladimir Putin a midget. At the same time, I don't think it suits the country well when he kisses Vladimir Putin's ass and wears the Vladimir Putin knee pads either.
Exactly.
So I agree with both of you. There has to be some middle ground here. And I'll go back to Kim Jong-un for a second. When he's asked about the murder of Otto Warmbier, and by the way, make no mistake about it, Otto was murdered for taking down a poster. And when the president is on a world stage and he's asked about that, and his stupid, cowardly response is, well, you know, I asked Kim Jong-un about it, and he said he felt very bad about it, and he had nothing to do with it, so I believe him. That is an embarrassment to the country, JD. You have to admit that, JD. Give me that at least.
Let's break down the Otto Warmbier situation. He goes to North Korea as a student. I'm not rationalizing anything. I'm saying break it.
He was murdered. Why can't we just agree he was murdered?
He took he took a poster. He took a propaganda poster off and he tried to bring it back.
So you think he deserved to be murdered?
I'm not suggesting he need. Of course, he didn't deserve to be murdered. But
so why are we even talking about that?
The rules in that country are different than the United States, and when you travel to that country, you have to abide by those rules. Otherwise, there will be consequences.
Okay, so why didn't Trump say that then?
Yeah.
Why didn't he say that then? Why didn't Trump give that explanation? You know what the explanation he gave is that he believed Kim Jong-un. Do you believe that Kim Jong-un felt sorry for the Otto Warmbier death? This is a man who's killed hundreds of thousands probably of his own people. He killed his own brother-in-law.
He killed his own brother-in-law.
Yeah, and you think that it is appropriate for the president of the United States to get up there on a stage and defend Kim Jong-un? How do you think the Otto Warmbier family and friends felt when the president defends Kim Jong-un over their own son? How do you think they felt?
And I don't support Kim Jong-un either. I mean, Kim Jong-un has something called a pleasure squad, and it is literally thousands of women that service himself and his military leaders, and they just cycle them through. So Kim Jong-un has done some pretty terrible things in North Korea.
Go aheed, Roger.
What does that got to do with Donald Trump being such a coward and he goes in and he kisses Kim Jong-un behind. He said he believes everything the dictator does.
No, he's not. He's not kissing his behind. He's just not starting a conflict. Here's the thing: Donald Trump he'll say something about Justin Trudeau because Justin Trudeau is not. He's not a threat. Vladimir Putin could potentially be a threat. Kim Jong-un could potentially be a threat, and he recognizes that. Mm-hmm. And when he sees actual threats, he treats them a little differently.
For the record, though,
he doesn't want to start a war.
Roger,
despite the fact that 80% of the far left believe that he does.
For the record, Roger, I appreciate the phone call. If you are a drug dealer, you can pave my driveway any day of the week. I would appreciate that. 257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Moon. Moon, you are next on the Vegas Take. What is on your mind?
What's up, Moon?
Oh, no, how you guys doing? I was actually calling about, I'm really thankful for you guys because, I just came across your guys' channel, and I just love hearing all the point of view. But I have a question about
Thank you.
So when Trump started running for president, he was talking about, how Obama wasn't even born in this country.
Correct. He did that for years, by the way.
So when you hear it's supporters saying, well, Trump is not racist and all that. But my question is, why did he continue over and over again saying, well, this man wasn't born here? And then he and his dad back in the 70s, they wouldn't even, run to black people, know. And
there's no question, Moon, that Donald Trump's family has a history of mistreating African Americans. Okay, that is proven when you look at all the lawsuits.
His father definitely does.
Okay, there's no question about that, number one. Number two, listen, Moon, you bring up a really, really good point in that what was the reasoning for Donald Trump for years? I think this went on for 5 years, claiming that Barack Obama was not born in this country. Did he ever apologize? Did he ever say, you know what, I was totally wrong, my sources were wrong, it was inappropriate for me to ever bring this up, I truly am sorry to the Obamas? No, because he'll never do that. He'll never apologize because he can do no wrong, right? The man is perfect. Just like it was a perfect phone call with the Ukrainian president, right? It was the perfect call, right? Donald Trump is perfect. I mean, if you asked him, his physical strength and stamina, he'd tell you it's perfect. If you asked him anything about his sex life, he would tell you it's perfect, even though he and Melania do not sleep in the same bed with one another. And Donald Trump is considered obese, but he would tell you he is in perfect physical condition because the man is a narcissist. Yeah, look, there are some people that make the argument, and listen, I understand why they do, that Donald Trump is a racist. I'm on the fence on that. I can tell you right now that he is a hateful person. He is a horrible human being. I don't know if he's a racist or not. I don't know what's in his heart. He's never just flat out said the N-word, but certainly the way he treated Obama for years was disgusting, Moon.
And just one more question before I leave.
Yes.
And the other thing is about bullying, how we call people's name.
Yes.
And all of that. And when kids go to school, they get bullied a lot.
Sure.
So when they hear the president of the United States calling people's name,
absolutely.
The whole thing about his wife out there, promoting like, hey, you guys should be nice.
Yeah, the queen of
other
cyber.
people and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
And I just understand how we can excuse this.
You can't.
When he goes around and call people's names.
Moon, that's
and
a good
somehow
point.
That's okay.
Yeah, no,
I don't get it.
Moon. You make a couple really valid points there, and that's probably one of the better points is that the first lady is the queen, you can say, of anti-cyberbullying. Well, guess what? Her husband is the king of cyberbullying. He does it every day. Let's try to squeeze in one more quick phone call, and then we got to go to break. Let's go to Marge. Marge, thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
Hey, what's up, Marge?
Happy New Year to both of you.
Thank you.
The couple of comments about all of this. Number one, Nancy was holding the impeachment orders to see if there's anything more that's coming out about Trump. And I think the reports about what Bolton was saying and everything else, I think give credence to that.
Mm-hmm.
The other is this Russian call. A couple of weeks ago, the broadcasters in Russia are calling Trump their agent, which is very concerning. I don't think that much was publicized in the United States about that, but it is concerning.
Sure.
And the other is that Kremlin issuing a readout of the calls that happened between Putin and Trump.
Mm-hmm.
That way they control the message. And I almost think that was probably a side agreement that Trump has had with Putin. That,
there's no question.
Whatever,
There's no question that this wasn't an accident, that they orchestrated this. There's no question. And I have a huge problem with that, and any American should. They are orchestrating this together. There is no question that we don't know everything that was said in that phone call. In fact, we probably didn't even know 20%. Maybe we know 20% of what was stated in that phone call. Marge, that's an excellent point. Always good to hear from you. Have a great New Year.
Good call, Marge.
There's no question about that Putin and Donald Trump are in cahoots with one another, and I don't know why. Now, I could come up with, reasons, and I can speculate. Maybe it has something to do with business that Trump has in Russia that maybe we don't know about. Maybe Putin has something on Trump that we don't know about.
I just love this double standard here where before Trump actually met Kim Jong-un through Dennis Rodman, his close friend, people were talking about, because him and Kim Jong-un, they were going back and forth on Twitter quite a bit about how a possible nuclear war could take place. Trump was calling Kim Jong-un names. Kim Jong-un was calling Trump names, et cetera, et cetera. And everybody was afraid that he was going to start this world war. Now the narrative is, now he's just kissing all these dictators' asses.
We got to take a break. Unfortunately, I don't have time to comment on that because coming up next is the minister. Well, I do. There's something called a break in radio. We got to take a break. But Minister Stretch Sanders is coming up next. Maybe we can continue this conversation a little bit on the other side of the break. The Minister Stretch Sanders coming up next. You're listening to the Vegas Take.